setting the scene for this excerpt that I am about to present, I want to let you know that this is very early in the story, and for the first time since telling his story to his best friend several years ago, Josiah Tucker is opening up and telling someone else about his sordid past. And this is his spiritual leader, the pastor of his church, that he is sitting down to speak with. And his past includes basically being an abused child, more mentally than physical. But he was an abused child, the son of a very neglectful, substance abusive mother and an absent father. And because of that, he spent just about all of his childhood from one foster home to another, staying with strangers, basically. And so it had a bearing on his life throughout his life. And at this point, he is now 30 years old, but he is sitting down and he's speaking with his pastor, and I'm picking up at the point where he has just finished telling his pastor the entire story. "You have indeed been through a lot," Bishop Lumpkin said. "Been through implies that is over and done with. I feel like I'm still going through it." It was the first time Josiah had admitted it out loud. "That's the problem. I pray and I ask God to take away the memories and the pain, but every single day it's still there on some level. Some days are better than others, but it's always there. My entire life I've put my everything into whatever I'm doing. School, work, church, everything, just to try and clutter my mind with so much other stuff that there's no room for the memories. But they're still there. And there are no good memories, none at all?" Bishop looked like he was sincerely trying to grasp for something positive. "None." Josiah wasted no time answering. "I don't even know who I am. The only person who gave me a particle of identity is dead, and sometimes I think I didn't know her either. I never knew a sober Reva Mae Tucker, not for long anyway. The little time she was clear-headed was spent trying to steal something from me or from somebody else that could buy her next high. And when she wasn't stealing, she was out on the streets trying to earn the money, the only way she knew how." "I see." "No, Bishop, no, you don't," Josiah insisted. "Part of the reason that I carry this unmistakable, unexplainable heaviness is because as much as I wish I could say I loved my mom, I don't think I did." When Josiah said that part, his voice dropped to a whisper. He felt ashamed of himself for saying the words and wanted to be sure that no one standing anywhere near the bishop's door could hear them. "I know it sounds awful to hear it, because it feels awful to say it, but it's true. I can't say that there was ever a time that I really loved my mother. I mean, I did, but I didn't. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I know," Josiah rambled. "But I don't know any other way to say it. I prayed for her all the time, and I hoped that she'd one day just snap out of it, but that never happened. So, just to get some relief, I would hope that she'd go off somewhere for a few days so I could get some sleep or so I could eat in peace, simple stuff that I just couldn't do when she was home. She never gave me anything, Bishop. I feel like I was the adult in the house and she was the kid, the spoiled, unruly, rotten kid." Josiah blinked away more tears. "I was constantly cleaning up behind her, washing her dirty clothes, picking up empty beer cans and liquor bottles, and making sure there were no filthy used needles lying around the house that I might step on or prick my finger with. I had to keep food in the refrigerator and lights on in the house and toilet paper in the bathroom. There were so many days when I asked God why he just didn't fix things so that I could remain with the Smiths. I just wanted to be a regular boy who lived a regular life, but I couldn't be a regular boy because I didn't have a regular mom." Bishop Lumpkin had been nodding throughout Josiah's rant, and when silence finally reigned, the pastor took advantage of it. "It's very understandable that you would feel that way, Brother Tucker. And believe it or not, I fully comprehend how you could love your mother, but not love her at the same time. There are different types of love, and there are some people in our lives, within and outside of our families, who we can only love with the love of Christ. Agape love is a type of love that makes you sacrifice self in order to try and help others. You definitely did that in the case of your mother. So maybe that was the kind of love you had for her. She didn't feel like a mother to you. She didn't do the things a mother should do for her child. Mothers are supposed to protect and care for their children, but yours brought danger and hardship to your life. It stands to reason that you wouldn't necessarily feel toward her as you would if she had been the nurturing person that a mother should be. Josiah had never heard it quite put that way before. He wasn't feeling so much like a monster anymore. That was how he'd felt for years, knowing he hadn't loved Reva the way a son should. Even still, the void was there. The same emptiness that he felt when he had no one rooting for him at his high school graduation, his college graduation, nor at his promotion dinner last night. It was still there. So the question I'd like to pose is, can children in foster care be affected their entire lives by what they did not have as a child, even if they become very successful as adults, which Josiah is a very successful man. He's now 30 years old. He graduated high school at the top of his class, graduated college at the top of his class, and now he works for a Fortune 500 company in an executive position. So he has all of those material things that a person could even hope for. He has the best car, the best house. He's a good-looking guy. He gets the attention of women. You know, he has all of those, maybe what we would call shallow things in life, those materialistic things in life. But although he has gained that level of success, he's still on the inside feeling very incomplete and broken. And so is it realistic that because of what a person goes through in their childhood, in those formative years of their lives, could it be that they would grow into very self-sufficient adults, people who are very successful in what they do, but still be very sad on the inside because of something that happened as far back as infancy and as a toddler and as a teenager and as a high schooler, even a college student? Can those things that happened to them follow them throughout life? I'd love to hear your responses.